recording of a politics Q&A for anybody considering to take politics as part of their A level. I hope you find it useful and informative. I'm Mr. Shaw. I am the politics lead for Cheney School, and I've got two of my Year 12s with me today. So, briefly, the course is split into 3 units. You have UK government and politics, where you'll look into how the UK political system operates, how parties are formed and what they do, prime ministers, cabinets, etc. You have the US government and politics, so that looks at the branches of governance, so the president, Congress, Capitol Hill, etc. And you also compare the US to the UK, so how the political system's different. And then finally, you've got ideologies. So this is like systems of beliefs that motivates people to act politically. So the ones that we investigate are liberalism, socialism, conservatism, and nationalism, which is quite relevant right now. Just before we get going, what questions did you two have before you decided to take your course? So, Orlando, what questions did you have about politics when you were thinking about taking it?
For me, the big one really was what is the subject actually like? Because of course, like we were the first year group to take this subject at Cheney, so we didn't have any year 13s to talk to. We didn't have any like year 12 people who were recommending it. And yeah, no, I was just originally just like, okay, I know it's politics, but which parts? What's this all going to be about? But no, that was probably like the only like big one that was pending on my mind when I chose the subject.
Very good, Toby.
Well, I was mainly interested in the last bit, the ideologies, which I haven't got to yet, but I wanted to see how it would sort of link in with other subjects. So I think if you're thinking of politics, it also works quite well, I'd like to say, with geography and history. And yeah, it does also work with sociology. So if you're sort of like picking in between any of those subjects, politics would be a nice one to sort of link in with them because you get current examples of what you're talking about in those lessons. And also politics in general.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think we've already answered that question, so we can just sort of move through. Well, that was the questions that you had. Were they broadly the same as your choice, your decision to study it, or did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'd say that that was my main reason why I wanted to study.
Yeah, Orlando, did you have any other particular motivations to study politics?
Yeah, no. Honestly, it's just because as a teenager right now, this is one of the best times we could be living through to like be studying politics. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the stuff which is going on right now is awful. I'm by no means saying that I approve it, but just the ability to study through all of it and just understand why this is all happening. It's like it's really useful for like being able to argue about it. I mean, arguing is great. Arguing it like challenges what we're thinking about. It challenges our own beliefs. And like I was a very opinionated person back in year 11, but oftentimes I didn't have the facts to like back up what I was saying, so I just start spouting some nonsense. But no, just through this, I just figured, you know what? I like politics. I want to know more about politics. And if I'm not willing to read like 15 newspapers every morning to broaden my understanding, I'm going to take the opportunity to just learn about it and get a grade for it, I guess.
Bro, so just let me check something. Cool. Yeah, so these sorts of moments in history are generally quite good to be investigating the whys and the hows. You know, like you guys have just done the US election with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That was quite interesting. Hopefully, very relevant for you to be following. So, how? Because you won't normally have done politics at GCSE, so you might not have a relevant comparable subject. But just in terms of A levels in comparison to GCSEs, how is politics different from year 11, and what should they expect, to be different? If we start with Toby.
Well, A level in general is different to GCSE, as they expect you can't just look at the textbook, memorize it, and then get a great grade. You also need to sort of look around your course that you're taking. So, for example, politics is great because we've got the news, so we can just look on that and see the current events that help us. But also, the jump is that there's a lot more writing. 25 markers sort of become just commonplace, and you've got to do a lot of them. And you do have to write quite a bit in it, like a page and a half to 2 pages, but you can't just write down keywords and just waffle through and just plop them in every so. You have to keep having a good structure throughout. So I'd say that is the key difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Orlando, did you want to add to that?
I'd say there's like 3 main steps that you need to like effectively revise for this. Like, one, when you're copying down notes in that textbook, get the relevant stuff. Don't get down everything. The more writing you have doesn't mean that you're smarter. It's how you're using those facts, which goes on to my second point. You want to be able to have a bunch of resources you can expand on with that, whether it's just speaking to your teacher about it, speaking to your parents about their views, or even better, the news. And then the last point is just having a clear plan of how you're going to use it, because if you don't have that plan, then square one is basically useless. So yeah, just take notes. You're going to take a lot of them, but that doesn't mean you have to take down everything.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Working smart and hard. So, Orlando, describe a typical lesson, please.
So as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 sort of distinct democracies we look at. We look mainly at the UK Parliament and the American system. So currently we're looking at the UK, and a typical lesson often starts with a question. So last lesson it was how much power does the PM really have? Before that, we've looked at how voting works, how the influence of pressure groups, and building on that lesson, typically we're introduced to the subject with a general overview, and then we do a task which often involves going through the textbook and being able to find like the relevant information. And like that ties back into what I was saying earlier, just the ability to find relevant information is like really important, because you can't just get everything down and expect to know how to use it. And and then oftentimes we will have a little practice essay, typically a 9 marker if it's, or 12 marker if it's at the end of the lesson, and then a 25 marker if we're doing like a full lessons practice. But that's about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Toby, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, he said a lot, but yeah, the typical lesson over time slowly changes, because at the beginning, because as Sir said, there isn't a politics GCSE. You sort of start from the bottom. So at the beginning, you have to learn a lot of the key words and most of the concepts to sort of get your head around it. So there'll be a lot of textbook and reading through at the beginning. Then over time, you slowly get more into debates and sort of talking about how the subject you're learning about at the point in time interacts with all the other previous things, to sort of build up your knowledge. Yeah, to build up your knowledge so you can create a better answer to essays or just in general.
Excellent. So, for you guys, what makes the subject special or interesting? Is there anything particular you enjoy most about the topics? Toby, let's start with you this time.
Well, what I'd say makes it special is the fact that it's just so current. What's happening nowadays and just anywhere around the world, America, US, that is quite small, but we can also look at other things because it's current. You can just look at the news and then you can incorporate that into your work. So it allows you to have a nice broad view of the subject.
Excellent. And Orlando?
Yeah, just in general, it's just such an expansive topic. There's so much. It's so relevant to like how we lead our lives now. It's relevant to understanding the actions of a lot of people, whether it's a conflict or a charity movement or a bill that could change like how our healthcare system works. It's all there. And also your class will be very diverse in terms of why people want to look at politics. Like we've got kids who want to study law, we've got kids who are going into like criminology and detective work. So just there's so many different reasons why you can do it, and it's just that diversity and that accessibility to everything just all comes back down to just like that time in the classroom. So in the end, it's just like it's just like such a big topic, but just the relevance is just immense.
Cool, brilliant. So normally I think this would be done with year 13s. So you guys naturally you won't perhaps have thought too much about what you're doing after A levels, but you know, what are your plans going ahead if you have them, and sort of how has politics shaped or helped shape those plans, Orlando?
So when I chose my A levels, I didn't technically do it with a career in mind. I just figured, okay, I know what I'm interested in. Let's get a grade for it. And with politics, it was much the same. Like I said earlier, I've always been very opinionated, but don't know everything. So I just figured, you know what, let's push myself to like somewhere which I may not be comfortable with, just because I don't agree with all the stuff which I'm taught in this lesson. But nevertheless, just the mindset is to just get into the mindset of the people I don't understand is like really useful. And as much like I've kept my options quite broad in like what I'm going to do after Cheney. I don't really have a set plan yet. But no, just again, politics is just such a broad topic with so much use that I've opened like loads more doors for myself. And I guess just like at the end of the day, I just have to pick one and go through it with no regrets, really.
Awesome. Toby, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm similar with Orlando on on the first bit. I just picked subjects I was interested in, so I didn't know really exactly where I wanted to go in a career path. But politics is also really good because it also shows you that politics could be a really good, viable career path, and it also just opens your eyes to a lot of other things, and it allows you to look more in depth into other subjects. So it can definitely change your plans because it can, well, show you about politics, of course, and make you look more in depth into society now because you'll be looking more into the news to get more broad ideas for your essays. So it's a really good course to do, and it can definitely help you change your plans or give you a plan if you didn't have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a bit of sort of teacher spiel in terms of like what politics can do. It's very broad. It's very cross-curricular. You know, if you look at the House of Parliament, for example, you have people who are lawyers, businessmen, parents. You know, there's no sort of one set group of people who've used politics sort of to further their own careers. You know, degrees that often have politics intake would be things like international relations, philosophy, politics, English literature, history is another good one. The geopolitics as sort of master's courses and things like that. So yeah, there are some ways in which like there are career routes, which is nice. So that is all of the questions. I was wondering if you guys had anything you'd like to add, just sort of at the end of it, any advice or any sort of thoughts for our prospective year 11s in regards to politics?
Well, I'd say,
You go,
well,
Toby.
go ahead, Orlando.
Oh, we're too polite. So honestly, like you guys are about to enter an era where politics is about to get really interesting. Like in England, we're gonna start seeing like the picking up from COVID. Hopefully, fingers crossed. You're gonna in America, you're gonna see the introduction of Biden's reforms. Like it's been 4 years since we've seen like new legislation, new like attitudes to healthcare, abortion, and all that stuff. And like that's going to be happening while you guys are doing like your exams, and that's just like an incredible thing to be able to like use to your advantage. So, like, honestly, if I had to give you one final bit of advice, it would just be the pieces are there. Just build it and keep at it, and honestly, it will pay off in the long run.
Very good, Toby.
Well, I was going to say politics is definitely a very interesting subject, and if you're sort of on the fence, you should definitely pick it. But another thing is that because this is A levels now, you're definitely going to have a larger workload. So you can't sort of just I just leave it to the day before, because you'll have lots of other courses. So you want to get it all done over and done all over and done with, and then you'll be better in the lesson, and then you won't be as stressed. And in general, that's just a good thing for any A level course.
Yeah, and that is key. I think it is important to acknowledge that politics does come with a lot of work, and I find that work interesting because it's reading the news and reading articles and investigating politics and politicians. But I think being passionate about that is definitely a good thing when it comes to sort of the workload for this course. So thanks very much, guys. Hopefully that's been helpful to all of you watching this video, and I will hopefully see you in a future course. Thank you very much.